My birthday was last weekend. Did I stick to my budget or did I go hog wild? I'll tell you all about how I fared with my spending coming up next. Welcome back to Ready Budget Go. My name is Drew, and on this channel we talk about cash budgeting, saving money, and achieving our financial goals. If that sounds like something you're interested in, please consider subscribing, hit the like button, and leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Today I'm giving an update for what happened with week 2 of my January budget. My weeks go from Friday through Thursday, so this covers the 10th through the 16th. And so the first thing that happened is I got my paycheck. Well, that wasn't the first thing. It was actually one of the last things. But it's the first thing on this sheet. So I'm going to fill that number in. And surprisingly, my paychecks actually went up a little bit this year versus where they were last year. So now that I have this figure, I will be able to budget better in future months. So I've been rounding. I'm not going to round anymore. I'm going to use the actual amount so that I get an accurate picture of what the remainder is going to be. Because otherwise, that money is just going to disappear into cash flow. I'll think I have more available than I do, and it'll just fritter away. So 3,071.63. I am on salary and I get paid twice a month, so it's always the same, except at the end of the year, there's an adjustment for insurance, and then periodically I'll get a bonus, which will be a separate check. I do have one of those bonus checks coming in the second half of this month. I know what the gross amount is going to be, but I have no idea what the net amount is going to be. So I didn't plan for it other than to say that I was going to send $1,000 to my emergency fund in the second half of the month. My bonus will likely be more than twice this amount, but I just didn't want to count on too much more than what I was expecting or what I would realistically expect to get. So that's it for the income section. And now we'll move on to the bills. There were only two that came out this last week. One was a transfer to my emergency fund, which was right on point, and the other was for the power bill, also right on point. Now, these I am rounding. I always round up to the next whole dollar. Any remainder will just build up the buffer in my checking account. A few pennies at a time, never a bad idea to have it. If it gets to a point where it's going to be, several hundred extra dollars, then I might transfer that over to my savings account. But that's going to take a lot of years for that to build up to that point. So for now, just rounding up to the next nearest whole dollar is good enough. Wallet spending, we'll fill in the expenses and we'll come back to that. Stockpiles, I am sending over from last week $106. So that will go to my emergency fund. That is from Monday night, from game night. And then I actually, in the account log, I transferred 160, and the reason is because I emptied out the rest of the letterbucks binders from last year, and that was another $54. But it was 106 from game night. That $54 was last year money, so I just put it into savings. I'm still doing letterbucks, but I'm using them differently now. I'm doing them once a month at the end of the month, and everything is going toward my savings goals. So my hope is that by the time the end of the year rolls around and I'm ready to transfer that money into my savings account, I'll be on like my fourth goal. So I've got first goal is fully funding my emergency fund. Second goal is fully funding my rainy day fund. Third goal is my Roth IRA. And fourth goal is what I'm calling the big move. And I've talked about that in more detail in some of my goal setting videos. Check those out on my channel if you'd like to get a bigger picture of what I'm doing there. But for now, for last week, just $106 from game night going to the emergency fund. So that's it for this sheet for now. We'll come back to fill in the wallet spend after I do the expense tracker. But first, I'm going to skip past the cash allocation and we'll go into the cash flow tracker. So I had quite a few transactions this week. I had the deposit for the letterbucks, which was $54. Now, this $70 was money that I'd already pulled out and put in placeholders. This $54 was the rest of it. So I'd had 124 in the letterbucks binders, which are now empty, and they're reset. So come the end of the month, when I'm ready to start putting those dollar bills in again, we'll bring those back out and we will start those over, and those will go through the end of 2025. The other deposit that I had was my paycheck. Paycheck number one. I get paid on the 15th and then the last business day of the month. And that was $3,071.63. Okay, and now for the outflows. So I had an ATM withdrawal, and this was to bring my weekly cash back up to $100. So that I took 65 out of the ATM. I had $35 already from leftover birthday cash and from money that I didn't spend last week. So I only had to take out 65 instead of the full 100. I had a credit card payment, and this was a big mama jama. This took more than my entire paycheck. This was $3,299.51. This is my business credit card, and so I put all my business expenses on it. I also put January rent on it for an incentive. So that came out of the business. I use part of my residence for my business, so I use the credit card to pay the December rent. It's the only month that I use to pay it. I will probably do the same for January, and that'll be it for 2025, again, for the sign-up incentive. But that comes out of cash flow. Because of how Ready Budget Go is set up, I am wholly responsible for all expenses. So things get kind of mixed, and I do track them somewhat separately for now, but a little more blended. I will start separating them more as Ready Budget Go continues to grow. Okay, and then the next two transactions are both transfers to the emergency fund, savings, emergency fund. The first one was the regular twice a month transfer of $205, and the second was the $160. This is $106 from game night plus $54 from Letterbucks over here. So that went into my emergency fund. I use a different bank for my emergency fund. I have that in Wealthfront. I use a different bank for my checking account. So I transfer those over to earn the higher interest at Wealthfront. And so that's where that money sits. So speaking of my emergency savings account, I am at a point where I can fill in the next line on the tracker. And so I'll do that in a little bit. But first, I am going over to the expense tracker. And here I'm just going to fill in the card expenses for last week. So if you haven't watched one of my budget check-ins before, I give myself a $250 spending allowance per week. I take $100 out of the bank in cash, and then I have $150 that I allow myself to put on credit cards, and then I pay those off at least once a month, if not more frequently. But that $150 that I put on credit cards is because those credit cards earn rewards. I do not have any credit card debt. I pay those balances off every month, so I earn the rewards without turning the expenses into revolving debt that I end up paying interest on. So, that being said, this week's expenses, I had a few transactions early in the week. Let's see. On the 10th, which was the Friday, I went to Panera, and I spent a whopping $2.71. Yep. The reason this is so low is that credit card rewards offset part of the cost. So there was actually another transaction that was covered completely and was wiped from the credit card statement. This one, it was actually about $10, and I had about $8 left of a benefit. So that's the balance that I end up owing. So that was on the 10th, and then on the 11th, which was my birthday, I had groceries, and I had those delivered through an app, and I paid for groceries this week, food, $116.06, which is high for me. But because it was my birthday weekend, I bought myself a few things that I don't normally buy, more expensive cuts of meat, so it was a little bit higher. And then, let's see, on the 15th, I had delivery through DoorDash. This was breakfast because I didn't have time to make it that morning, and breakfast delivery is expensive. especially in this market. So that was almost 20 bucks. And then on the 16th, also breakfast, I hit McD's for the princely sum of $9.23. Again, food's expensive here. And then we have cash spending, and last week I spent only $60. So this is weekly cash spent. I didn't track it last week because I had birthday money, so it kind of was a wash. So I spent 60. So I have $40 left. I will need to replace this 60 at the bank at some point. I haven't been yet, and I will probably do that over the weekend. So that's my total. I am going to add all this up, and I will input it into the sheet on page, or the budget overview page. So $2.71 plus 1606 plus 1975 plus 923 plus 60 is $207.75. So a little over from where I'd like to be, but I am still under the weekly $250 allowance. I was giving myself $200 a month, or $200 a week, sorry, last year. This year I've increased it a little bit. But I figure, it's my birthday week. I was really good the week before. This week it was a little more. But again, I treated myself to things that I ordinarily don't buy. And to only go over by $7 and still come in under the budget, I think I did pretty good. So we'll write that in here, $207.75. Okay. And now, since those are done, I am going over to my emergency fund. And the great news is that I reached another threshold this week already. It seems like it wasn't that long ago that I colored in this section here. And apparently I used a different marker than I had the time before, so it came in a different color, but that's okay. So my balance as of today, when I'm recording this, is $8,692.76, which is above this line. So we are going to color in that section. And the way I do this, I'm just going to pull this out. And I'm going to get a backing board here. Move this over to the side. I don't need that anymore. So my goal for this section now is to have it complete by the end of April. And once I have this done, I am going to move on to saving a rainy day fund. And my rainy day fund is going to be significantly smaller than my emergency fund, but still, a reasonable amount of money just to catch any of the little expenses that come up. If you've been following my channel for a couple of months now, then you'll see, or you'll remember, that I have had emergencies come up last quarter. I had a family situation in December, and in November we had a big storm. Both of those kind of rocked my budget. So I want to make sure that next year I don't have to try to cash flow that or figure out where the money's going to come from. I will just have a rainy day fund. And I can pull from that and then focus on replenishing that over time, rather than having to essentially rejigger my whole budget within the month while the emergency is going on, and try to keep my head above water. Okay, so that's filled in. I am going to put it back in the book, and really hoping I can get to where I want to be by the end of April. I will have another bonus check coming in April, unless things change. There's no guarantees in life, but for now, I'll have the bonus check coming in at the end of January, and the plan is to put all of that toward the emergency fund. So ideally, by the end of February, I'll be filling in the next line, and then end of March, and then end of April, but we'll see how it goes. And then the last thing that I want to do, just while I have this book, is to fill in the cost of utilities that I just got the bill for. Let me put this away. And I track this every month because this is something that I have to pay every month, but it varies, so I never know what the bill is going to be. You can see that I've had a low here of about, looks like 189 was the lowest, and my highest previously was 242, and this one breaks all records. Not by a lot, but still, it's significantly higher than it was the month before, and it's been trending upward. So I will need to talk to the property management about it. But I think what happened is, I think there were 32 days in this period, and that's why it's a little bit bigger. So 2/1/25, the total amount due is $243.66, which is a difference. Let me bring the calculator back here. 227.06, $16.60. So not much I can do to control these expenses, but and it is going in the wrong direction. But I'm hopeful that as we get toward warmer weather, it will start to tick back down again. Just something that I track. This also is handy because I get the bill in the middle of the month, but it's not due until the first of the next month, along with the rent payment. So this way, when I'm going through and paying bills, I can just reference this page and say, okay, this was the amount due, or when I'm filling out the budget for the next month. So that's it. That's all I have for today. That's the weekly check-in. Not a lot of transactions. Last month, like I said in my video from last week, I was tending to just go through and fill everything in and then come back and do a voiceover later that I would dump on top of it. Now I'm just doing it live because there aren't as many transactions. Much less spending, much more controlled expenses, and looking forward to what 2025 will bring. I want to thank you for watching through to the end of the video. I really do appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. Hit the like button, leave me a comment down below, and share with your friends. If you're interested in this recurring bill tracker or any of the other worksheets that I use to keep track of my monthly budget, they're available in my Etsy shop as a digital download, and I'll have a link to that down in the description below. I've got a February budget with me coming up this next week, and of course I'll be back on Monday for game night. And until I see you then, take care.